Hello and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. My name is Laura Bradburn and I am joined on this Friday by Jim Orr. How you doing, Jim?
Good, Laura. Pleased to be here.
Yes, good to be here. And an Axom first, Jim and Brian Dignan are appearing on the same broadcast. Brian, how you
Dream
doing?
team.
As it's been a long time coming. It's been several years in the making, but we're here, the main event. It's good. Actually, I think I'm just an Amy Canavan short of my Axon bingo card, which is quite nice. So we just need to get Amy on next week and we're laughing.
It's good to know on someone's bingo card. This is good. This is the highlight of my day so far. It's been a slow day.
Sadly, playing bingo's becoming the highlight of my weekend. That's how bad my life is, isn't it? But...
So does that mean when you're on with Amy, you just need to shout house as soon as the thing starts, and that's you?
And then I'm off. And then I'm just going to dial off.
That's
the last time
retire. That's good.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Wherever you're joining us, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. I've done this spiel a million times, but you know how it works. Helps us out a massive amount, so please do that. Jim, I'll come to you first. We were obviously, you weren't with us last week, but we delayed the broadcast because of John Hughes' funeral, a big event in Celtic's history, or certainly he was a big player in Celtic's history and a big event for the club. That the funeral took place last week. You were talking before we came on air about how you felt watching it and how his son dealt with the whole situation. Quite admirable, wasn't it?
His son John's eulogy was absolutely outstanding. If you haven't seen it, go over to YouTube and watch Big Yogi's funeral. And his son was just absolutely brilliant. I only met Yogi once, similar to Bertie. Last year, he came along to Bendel at Bertie. I've been liaising with his son John for about a year before that, and so my dad's not well at all. I don't think there's any chance he would be able to come along. But he then made that a target to try and come along to the play, and he started going out walking every day, and eventually made it along to the play. I think the younger John Hughes comes from Northern Ireland. He'd organised a big family night out, so there's between about 12, 15 of them came along to Bendel at Bertie, and they had a kind of fantastic family night out. So John Hughes made it. And then he made it up the stairs because we had Big Yogi and John Fallon on the stage at the end of the night. So due to his tenacity and determination, he managed to make it up the stairs. And actual fact, next to Des being gifted Bertie's jacket, that was my favourite memory of the whole kind of Bendel at Bertie journey so far. That Yogi comes on the stage and he puts his arm around John Fallon. It's like, two ordinary men who've lived this kind of extraordinary life, and they're both kind of similar because they're Lisbon Lions but didn't play in Lisbon on the day. John Fallon was a sub, and I read Yogi's book a number of years ago, and he says that any time the Lisbon Lions get together, he always feels a wee bit out of it, because he didn't actually play on the day. And I mean, I've got no doubt if John Hughes had been fit, John Hughes would have played in Lisbon. Here's one for the chat room. What do you think? Would John Hughes have played in Lisbon? I also think Joe McBride would have played in Lisbon if he was fit as well. Can always come back to that. But he was a fantastic player. I was just a wee bit too young. But in doing the research for the play, there's a great clip of the New Year's Day Old Firm game, as it was called back then, 1965. And we're 1-0 down at half time. Jimmy Johnson's been sent off. And in the last 10 minutes, Yogi gets the ball from the halfway line, just beats 3, 4, 5 players. He was brought down. Celtic get a penalty and then miss it, which was typical of Celtic back then. But if you have never seen Yogi Hughes at his fantastic dribbling best, YouTube, January 65, Rangers Celtic, have a look. And I suppose a player that, for the younger listeners, Ollie, it would be, if you compare to a modern day player, I think I would go for Samaras. That kind of big guy, great feet, good in the air, scored tons of goals. 7th top goal scorer in Celtic's history. Phenomenal. And he still had a few years left of him at Celtic Pub, but Jockstein got rid of him. There's a bit of bad blood between the two of them. But anytime Jockstein needed somebody for a big game, John Hughes was the guy he called on. And that's why I think he'd have played in Lisbon. Because the semi-final against Dukla Prague at home, he picks John Hughes. Injured for the final. 3 years later, semi-final against Leeds, picks John Hughes. Final, picks John Hughes. So for me, it was a shame he didn't play in Lisbon. And then you say, well, who'd have missed out? I think Lennox would have missed out. So who knows what might have been back then, but a fantastic player, and his son did him proud last week.
Yeah, absolutely did. Brian, it's amazing when you think about it. Jim was talking about, explaining to younger fans the type of player that John Hughes was, for those of us who didn't see him play. It's amazing that even as younger fans who maybe never saw him in his prime or in the flesh at all, that we can name players like him, like Joe McBride, like Charlie Gallagher, who weren't even part of that famous 11 that took to the field in Lisbon, but were still such a vital part of that period of the club's history.
Absolutely, and it's it's part of the famous song, isn't it? If you know your history, and I think Celtic almost not as a sort of individual against other clubs, but I think Celtic's kind of unique in a way in that everyone sort of embraces the history as if they were there. Even, looking back, you're sort of proud of these players if you saw them fleeting or you never saw them at all, and you sort of get into the mythos of it. And I think I said before, I said last week when talking about the Lisbon Lions and in that period, it's the ultimate, sporting story. It's a Rocky story. It's how on earth there's not a movie about it. I'd imagine there's probably tried to be a few times, but it is that beautiful sort of real life sort of fairy tale story, and I think it will never be forgotten ever. And I think when my wee man's in his 50s, he'll be talking about Lisbon Lions for all those years ago. So I think it's what makes Celtic sort of special and sort of unique, and within that, it makes what the Lisbon Lions done so unique. And guys like John and the rest of the guys, they're absolute giants, not just in Scottish football or Celtic's history, but in football in general. And they should never, ever, ever be forgotten how massive that achievement was, and the style and the way they went about their business. And I think Jim said it perfectly, as he's wanting to do. He was an ordinary man living an extraordinary life, and I think that sums it up nicely.
Yeah, absolutely does. Ridiculizer saying there, Mike's a bit crackly there, big man. I want to give Brian his props here, because many of the contributors, myself included, had they not had a computer working, might have said, you know what, guys, I'm out for today, take the wheel. But Brian is sitting there with his phone propped up on God knows what to give you the show that you all want. The show must go on, Brian, isn't that the case?
Don't worry about it, Brian. I've had Munn say this when I first started. Who's that clown?
It's Freddie Mercury.
Is his dial-up not working today? Is his modem collapsed and all this kind of stuff? So don't you worry,
it's
son.
my shady phone, so that also explains the John T angle I'm sitting at as well. So apologies for the sound quality.
So that's not intended, that John T angle. That's not your best side. Is that kind of no?
No, I don't think I have a best side.
Both sides are good. I'm not making a comment. I'm just general observation. That's all.
No, I do appreciate that, Jim. It's nice to hear that, but I think I'm one of those rare creatures that doesn't have a best side. I think I've got two bad ones.
Join the club.
That might be the angle that PJD is looking at everything from this morning, as he got a sore head after last night. Says Green Lichty, I think that says. If you didn't see it, we had the first ever State of Mind music festival, Las Vegas, played that last night. There will be footage of that on the channel soon, and you can see it soon.
Which is unbelievable, given where Paul came from in terms of building up the channel.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Las Vegas, unbelievable. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Hats off to him, yeah. Great.
And confirmation as well that there's more than just football content on the channel as well. There's so much else to watch and to look at, especially the music content. Not particularly my taste of music, boys, but I've been through that before.
I was going to say that. Who are Las Vegas? Is that like Westlife? Are they the same? I know you're a big Westlife fan, Laura. So.
Oh yes.
But like Westlife, is it the same thing?
I'm not sure it is exactly the same thing, but we'll maybe leave that be. But I'd put it this way: I don't see Westlife headlining a State of Mind festival anytime soon. But
right. I have heard of Las Vegas. Anyway, sorry. I'm interrupting a wee bit today, so okay.
Oh,
okay.
Don't worry about it. I'm sure nobody will get annoyed about that, Jim.
Nobody will notice.
Okay. Jim, last week was a bit of a walk in Rugby Park, if you want to call it that. A 5-0 victory, pretty convincing. Ange Ball was thick and fast.
You're allowed to say that, Ange Ball. You're allowed to say that. I thought that was banned.
I don't know if you are, but it's different to Lenny Ball anyway, that had Adam Matthews playing up front for Omnia Nicosia last night. But
what's that about? Yeah.
Let's not go there. We'll go back to Ange last week. What did you make of our return to Rugby Park? Was it a better return than you were expecting, or did you expect us to kind of blow them away?
No, better than expected. I think that's another potential banana skin negotiating. Ross County the previous week, obviously, that's the first time I've been on since Ross County. That was a potential banana skin. And I think like everyone else, we were trying to find a dodgy stream to watch the game on. And then we were playing okay, actually, in fact. And then the stream went down. I think that's what changed things. And I ended up listening to the game on the radio. I hate listening to games on the radio because I always feel I've got no control over what's happening. If I'm at the game, I'm in total control. Watch on the TV, it's a bit less control. Watching the radio, you've got no idea what's happening. So that was a banana skin that we got through. And last week, Kilmarnock, to win 5-0, brilliant, fantastic. But in saying that, I thought after the first goal, which was a great team goal, I think we should score more of those kind of goals. Given the way we play, for me, we don't score as many of those types of goals. We've now started scoring goals from set pieces and long-range shots, but those wee intricate moves are great. So that was a great goal. But I felt between the first goal and the second goal, we'd played better in other games. I thought Kilmarnock was a bit quiet. I thought O'Reilly was a bit quiet. I thought Turnbull tried the odd pot shot, wayward shots. But once we get the second goal, another Jota brilliant goal, we won and played really well. Scoring goals from set pieces now, great. Starfelt getting a goal, great. Yakimakis score goals for fun if he gets the game time. So, yeah, and the plastic pitch was horrible, but that's maybe a debate for another day. Shouldn't have to play on that. You're always worried about an injury. Get through it okay. 5 goals, clean sheets, job done. As I said, another potential banana skin negotiated. And yeah, great start. Let's just keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great start. Brian, Jim raised an interesting point there about 2 potential banana skins with Ross County away and Kilmarnock away, 2 places that, for some reason, whatever it is, we always seem to struggle to get points there. Do you think having negotiated those potential banana skins, we've set ourselves up really well, more than if it had just been 6 points off any other teams?
Well, I think that if you look at from the start of last season, how well we negotiated these games at the start. Performances against Livy were really poor. We did struggle at times. Late equaliser, obviously the famous one, Ralston header against Ross County. So we have got sort of, better over the course, and I think that's just continuing. I think what you're seeing is, I think the more the players playing that system and know each other well, they're finding solutions to problems themselves without having to sort of go, like Gaffer said, this would better stick to it. You can see there's like bits of invention and stuff, and I think if you look at Greg Taylor in particular, I think he's really grasped onto that, and he's trying things a little bit more differently because he's feeling more confident in the role. It's interesting what Jim said about some of the performances, because I agree. Everyone knows I go to bed with Matt O'Reilly jammies on. I love him, right? But
I didn't know that. Sorry, that's news to me.
Jim, I'll show you them when we go.
I never saw that on Twitter. You on Twitter, bro? I'm on Twitter.
I'm not on Twitter.
Photographs?
Maybe later, aye.
Guys, the internet is a dangerous and strange place. I would just watch what you're doing here.
You're not on it anymore. I'm just talking to Brian here, right? Right. Looking forward to those pictures, Brian.
Well, listen, if I start posting pictures of me in my jammies, it's
sorry, take it back.
More interesting.
Don't want that to be misconstrued. Don't want that to be misconstrued in any way, shape, or form. Don't send me the pictures.
But in regards to performance, I thought it was actually probably Matt O'Reilly's poorest game for us. I thought him and Turnbull struggled, actually. I thought O'Reilly was, and one of the things that he does really well is wins the ball back a lot. I think goes underrated at times, but he never really nearly got a grasp of it. That being said, we had 2 of our top performers, Turnbull and O'Reilly, not performing and still won 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I mean about overcoming these things where your stubborn defences, low blocks, plastic pitches, whatever you want to call it. We're scoring goals to set pieces, 2 overhead kicks. You're bringing Yakimakis off the bench. He's scoring an absolute blinder, as he's wanting to do. So I think that you can't not be pleased how we're doing things, but it's the sort of individual players' football intelligence, the improvement I've saw in that is what's been most pleasing for me, because they seem to be finding a route to these problems. People were screaming last season, there's no plan B, there's no plan C. I think that actually you're seeing that these players now that they're confident can understand and find these moves and find these things.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think you're right. Also, it's quite relative as well, because I think by saying that O'Reilly and Carmack didn't have the best game, they played well. You know, so you're
Aye, that's what I
comparing
mean.
it
It's
to
just
games where they've been outstanding. So actually, they did fine. It's not saying they played badly. They just maybe weren't as fantastic as normally are, but they did enough to win the game. And also, having the 5 subs again and the quality that comes off the bench now makes a huge difference as well. And that's why, compared to every other team bar one, we can change half a team. So that's why we should be winning, all these games. There's now and again the occasional potential banana skin. I need to say this every week now, don't I? The potential banana skin that's out there. You might drop some points, but most of the games we should be winning. Certainly with thinking off half a team from the bench, and the quality's there now. That wasn't there last year, and certainly the year before that it wasn't. But it's certainly there now. So good.
it's an interesting point, Jim, and something we talked about a little bit last week about whether Abada should be a starter because he's such a great impact off the bench. Are you quite happy for things to continue the way they are if we can, run them ragged for the first 60 minutes and bring them off the bench to close it out? Is that something you're quite happy to see continuing?
Absolutely, because I think Abada, I've spoken about Abada quite a lot, and he's just reinforced what I think of him. He's not a winger, but he's got a brilliant eye for a goal. I mean, the goal he scored up in Ross County, a great team goal again, but he scored from outside the box. He took the shot on from outside. He very rarely scores from outside the box. So there they are. There's another string to his bow by scoring outside the box. I think he's somebody to be played through the middle. But if you get Kyogo and Yakimakis in front, you're not going to get through them. I don't think he's a winger. And one of the things I was interested in, that I heard Alan Morrison saying the thing about Abada's stats, and he said something which I can't remember what he actually said, but something like it doesn't look as if he's doing very much in terms of he doesn't dribble past people and his crossing's not as good as it should be, which is what I said this time last year after a few games, that he doesn't look like a winger to me. But what I think would be very interesting is the combination of Abada Ralston. In that, if I'm Abada, I need Ralston to play with me because I look for him. I look to play the pass, and the quality of Ralston's crossing is great. Having said that, Juranovic was outstanding. That's one of the best games he's had last week against Kilmarnock. But I think that's a kind of interesting combo that if you play Abada wide, you need to play Ralston beside him. But I don't think you play Abada wide because I think you play him through the middle. But he's never going to get in the team. However, if you have 5 subs, you bring him on 30, 35 minutes to go, I think that's ideal, the way that's worked out. Not much fun if you're Abada and I'm on the bench, but yeah, I think that's worked out really well.
I don't know. I think you could be pretty satisfied if you're Abada getting on for the last half an hour of a game and sticking a goal in every week. Like, I think I would be.
I think if you're a football player, you want to play all the time. That's my concern. I was on last time, I said Yakimakis. At some point, if you sub all the time, you start to get fed up with being sub all the time. And then there was stories during the week that maybe some clubs down south are sniffing about and what have you, and money will turn people's heads. So I know Ange said something like it's not his job to keep people happy, but you have to keep people happy. That's a bit of a kind of balancing act, and you do have to keep people happy. And as I said last time, I'd love to see the Yakimakis Kyogo combination up front if there's some way that you could fit them both together. But if you win a game's 5-0, you can't really argue with the big man. It's kind of, if you were to drop points against somebody, you can say, why didn't you do this, that, and the other? But if you win a game of football, you can't complain because the objective is to put 3 points on the board. We did that, scored 5 goals. So, the big man, Ange, has got it right again. But I think that's a difficult one to try and keep everyone happy. And maybe if we did get a sizable bid for Yakimakis or Abada or Kyogo, given the riches that we have just now, the club might consider that. But it's a good problem to have, and hopefully Ange can keep them all happy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that about trying to figure out 2 up front, because I was watching Karabag versus some Czech team in the Champions League qualifiers, and for the first time in about 10 years, I saw the Czech team playing a straight 4-4-2. They were playing 2 banks of 4 and 2 up front, and it was actually quite unusual to see it. But
you get too much time in your hands, Laura, if you're watching games like that. Surely.
Honestly, I will. As my mother would say, I would watch the Brownies versus the Guides, but that's another story. JR says Andrew's going to have the selection headaches he wants. Brian, Jim's touched on it there. The conversation about who to start, who to bring off the bench. The fact that you could have Ralston or Juranovic at right back. It seems to have kind of crept upon us, this squad depth and this strength and these options that we have. Is that, I don't know, to me, that signifies more about what Ange has achieved at the club than anything, than even the way that we play. Is that something you agree with?
Well, I think you can see the difference in players now that there's competition for spaces. I think Greg Taylor again, bringing him up for the second time, because I think, he gets a hard time a lot, but he's been excellent this season so far, and I think it's probably because he's more confident in the role, but also because he's got Bernabe potentially breathing down his neck. I think you saw that with Ralston, with Juranovic. I think whenever Ralston gets a chance, generally speaking, he takes it. And I think that conversation for places is great. And I think that I said last week, the idea of should Abada start, should he sit on the bench? I think once the Champions League games start and the Cup games start, it's going to be so much rotation that everyone's going to start probably a fairly similar amount of games. Like I think, because I think Giakoumakis will finish top goal scorer this year. And the reason I think that is because I think Kyogo will start in Europe most of the time, because his movement and his pace and the counter-attack. So I think Giakoumakis will start a lot more domestic games. And by extension, he's playing against weaker defences, so I think he'll score more. So I think I don't think you have a sort of prescribed A side and a B side, but I think you will see players rotate throughout. So I think Abada's going to start maybe as many games as he's on the bench. I think it'll be pretty even split. I don't think it'll be, So I slightly contradicted myself here, because I think the team that starts against Hearts is going to be the exact same team that started against Kilmarnock. Maybe Carol Starfelt aside, because I don't know what's happened with Jens' injury. But I think he will start changing the teams as we get towards Europe and the Cup games, and then you start to see a bit of tinkering. And I don't think we're tinkering for tinkering's sake, but you maybe start to see a change. And the other thing that Jim said that I quite agree with is the Abada-Ralston relationship. But I also think that I'd like to see Giakoumakis and Maeda play more together, because I think what Giakoumakis lacks in the press, Maeda can do for him. And Giakoumakis can be in the box and menace people, and I think that combination works quite well. So it'll be interesting to see throughout the season, the little sort of relationships that build up and who sort of works better. Because I do think Ralston's probably the best crosser. Because Jota and then maybe Ralston, but I think it's interesting to see those dynamics will come into play and you start to see that pattern forming.
I think the stats tell you that, without going on Alan Morrison, that Ralston's contribution last year, assists and goals were significantly better than Juranovic's. But maybe, as you say, Brian, horses for courses in some of the games. And I think that there's going to be loads of games this season. Hopefully we do go far in Europe, whatever European competition it ends up being. So Ange will have to rotate the squad and whatever. But if you pick your best 11, I don't think you pick Abada in that best 11. So that's kind of where I think we are just now. But it's great to have that headache. And as I said earlier, bringing on half a team whenever you feel like it is brilliant. So and we've got good players, which is the main thing. If you get good players, you've got a chance.
Yeah.
It's not much point having 5 subs for all duds. So
yeah, we've been through that already.
yes, we've had that game. Yeah, saw that movie. Yeah.
Talking about Europe, Andrew Gillies says we are strong enough to win the league whoever plays, but Ange must concentrate on what team starts in Europe. Jim, to contrast that with what Brian was saying, I kind of agree that I don't think there's going to be what we would call a starting 11. It will be a rotational squad. But I guess what Andrew's saying there is that potentially that rotational squad could do whatever domestically, but we need to play a strong 11 in Europe. Do you see him having a preferred 11 in Europe, or will it be dictated by who the opposition is?
I think it's the point that Brian just made there in terms of Europe's a different kettle of fish. We could make tons of chances in the SPFL and miss most of them and still win 5-0. You can't do that in Europe. And it will be horses for courses. And although Ange talks about just looking at ourselves to make sure we're okay, if we draw Real Madrid or something like that, then that's a whole different ballgame. And hopefully we get a reasonable draw next week. I'm not bothered about the top seed, because top seed will qualify no matter what. We're going to get a glamorous team like Real Madrid. That would be good. But we're going to have so many games this season. We're going to have injuries and suspensions and whatever. And we've got a decent sized squad, which we might, as Andrew said, maybe add 1 or 2 more to it. in terms of quality, we've got the quality this time we didn't have last time. And it'll be interesting to see how Ange goes for Europe. Does he really go for it? We're going to, if we draw a big glamorous team at the top seed, we're going to go head to toe with these guys or not. So I'm going to find that fascinating because although we put some good teams last year, they were still a level down compared to what we could be getting this year. So that's dead exciting as well. And it should be a really exciting season. But yeah, he's got some big decisions to make come Europe. And as you said before, Brian, Kyogo looks like, that's the kind of guy for Europe. The Kyogo-Jota combination, or the flood them. It'll be fascinating watching what Ange does because this is a test for him. I'm not saying last season wasn't a test, but the point that you just made there for the person who just posted the thing there was that we should be able to beat the Livingstons and the St Johnsons of this world, without being at 100%, without pushing ourselves. Europe's a different kettle of fish. So that'll be fascinating to see how that pans out this season.
A little bit of fun, Brian, at the halfway point of the show. Scott House says, 6 days to go on the big draw. Can't wait. I'm hitting the pub and making a day of it. Bring on Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And I like the picture of John Dal Thomason in there as well. That's a good throwback to last season. Jim's talked about the glamour teams. Scott's mentioned Real Madrid. I think a lot of Celtic fans are wanting Real Madrid just because it's a glamour tie that we've never really had. What's your preference on the group stages? Do you want big glamour teams and test ourselves against the best, or would you rather see us get what we might consider a favourable draw to see if we can get last 16 or something like that?
So I'm a bit more of a kind of bring it on. I'm quite happy with the so-called bigger teams of the glamour ties because I actually don't think there's a huge drop in quality between pots 1, 2 and some of the teams even in 3. I think that actually, regardless who you get, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for us. And I think we really need to test ourselves against that sort of marker and see how far have we come. To go back to that comment, we're very, very comfortable at SPO level. There's no doubt in that. We really want to test and see how far we've come in terms of performances in Europe. So, I mean, the example I used is Bodo Glimt last year. If you'd have picked a draw, you'd have picked Bodo Glimt because you'd have said, well, who don't know who they are. They're in a region to get them in. And they battered us. So you don't know what kind of form teams are in. So it's all right saying, I want a so-called easy draw. But just because they might not be the sort of most famous team in that group, it doesn't mean they're going to be rotten. And it could be that you get a big gun that's having a nightmare. Like in years gone past, if you'd do Man United, you'd have been going, Man United, some draw. This time you go, Man United, some draw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're rotten. But they're still a big club. So I suppose the long way of answering a short question is that I don't really care who we get. I would rather have the bigger ties and make a go at it than have the so-called sort of less interesting ties and then maybe they'll be through anyway. I think we go for it. I don't think Andrew changes approach for iota, really. And I don't think you have, again, just to piggyback on that previous point, I don't think you have a strongest team, but there's certainly players that are going to be more suited to Europe than others. I mentioned Kyogo, I think Maeda is going to be great for us in Europe, just in terms of work ethic, just really putting their attacking fullbacks, etc., under pressure. I think Juranovic, although we've been praising Ralston for his delivery, Juranovic is far more athletic. His movement's better, he's quicker. And
he's a more technical player as well, yeah.
And I think that's going to be paramount in Europe. It's actually the reason that, as much as I really like David Turnbull, I think he's an excellent player, Hatate has to start in Europe because of that athleticism, that drive, that sort of movement, and the same with O'Reilly. So I think there's certain players that will definitely start. Jota, of course, as well. But I don't think that necessarily dictates the rest of the team or has it an A-B team or an A team or a B team. I think it's more the individuals that are more likely to start just because they've got that athleticism. It's actually the only concern I've got with Greg Taylor in Europe. As good as he is and as much as he's improved, he's athletic in that he's got a lot of stamina, but he's not got great recovery pace. He's not the strongest. I don't think the fact he's not very tall is much of an issue because in Europe a lot of players aren't that big, but even the sort of shorter players are robust, they're strong, they're athletic, they're really fast, and that's more my concern where we could fall down as opposed to the quality of the players we've got. So that's sort of my take on that.
I agree with that last point you made, because I think we do lack a bit of physicality. I think we do lack a bit of height. And I watched the PSV game the other night, and they were all monsters. They were all huge guys, and skillful to go with it as well. The objective is to qualify to get into the last 16. So I can take it as read that the pot 1 team will be too good for us anyway. So let's bring on the glamour. Let's bring Real Madrid. It's been 40 years since I've been at Celtic Park. We haven't played them in the Champions League. And I want the other 2 teams to be duffers, basically, or as much duffers as possible if you get in a pot 2, pot 3 team. And somebody we've not played before. We don't want Benfica again. I don't know Benfica. We don't want the same teams again, and because we've seen them. So a couple of teams we haven't seen before, to pick up the point Brian made, who are not having a good season, who gives us the maximum chance of getting through into the last 16 of the Champions League and one glamour tie. And obviously in the glamour tie we'll be behind the couch in the away game. But bring them on. But pot 2, pot 3, hopefully they're beatable. Give us a couple of teams who are beatable that gives us a chance, because then it's the most disheartening thing in the Champions League if you lose your first 3 games and you're thinking, these last 3 games are a bit of a dead rubber now. So you want to go to the last game. You want the excitement of back in the day when we played Man United. To win this game, we qualify for the last day. That's what you want. The excitement of it. And European nights at Celtic Park. I mean, whether we win or although our record's not been great, the actual atmosphere is fantastic, and you can cut the atmosphere with a knife, and the level of concentration that the players have to have, because that one slip and you lose a goal. I love all that because the fans are concentrating as well. We're all concentrating on the one thing, whereas an SPFL game you could fall asleep for 10 minutes, waking up, scored a couple of goals. I don't mean that in the facetious way I've actually said that, but just I love the whole level of concentration in a Champions League night, because you're playing somebody and that's the beauty of football. You go to football because it's uncertain. You don't know who's going to win. Now, Hearts on Sunday's a bit different, but if we're playing Livingston this weekend, if we don't win the game, it's a disaster. Therefore, it's not as uncertain as it should be. But if you're playing an Anderlecht or a PSV or a Benfica or whoever, who knows how that's going to go? You're playing a Real Madrid. It's like, if we can get a point here, this is fantastic. So that's the beauty of playing at that kind of level. And the points you made earlier, Brian, about playing Bodo Glimt, it's like, well, can we be bothered? And then they give us a doing. So that's a kind of lose-lose, that one. So I'm looking forward to the Champions League. I think it'll be great. It'll be good fun. And just give us a couple of teams that will get a chance of getting through. And hopefully we get a wee bit of luck, because there's been some games, we've lost a penalty kick or something like that, where you think, that was never a penalty kick. And we get VAR, obviously, that should maybe help or hinder us. Looking forward to it.
I've got 3 groups that some of the commenters have put in that I think cover all the bases. EMC 1888 says, give us Frankfurt, Tottenham and PSV. Now, on paper, that might be achievable to potentially progress from that. But that would make me so nervous. Like, the fact that I would maybe think we could possibly do it would make me even more nervous than if it was a big...
I think you want to avoid an English team. I think there's other factors to do with that. So avoid an English team for me. Yeah.
The next one is AGSC Tech says, I'll take Porto, Leipzig and Shakhtar. I want to get your thoughts on this, because my main thing about this draw is, and this is the ultimate privileged Celtic fan view, right? I don't want a group like that, because we've seen Porto and we've seen Shakhtar a million times. I want somebody fresh, somebody new. Is that just me being entitled?
No, you want a bit of variety. Yeah. I mean, obviously Porto done them before Leipzig. From a kind of football point of view, maybe that looks not a bad group to be in. But from a kind of freshness, that fails the test. Sorry, AGC, sorry.
What do you make of that one, Brian? Am I just being entitled, or are you wanting freshness?
No, I think I'm quite an emotional guy, as we all know. I'm a bit excitable, and I don't know if I would be a nervous wreck all day thinking about playing Porto or Shakhtar. I think I would rather have a bit more, we're playing Real Madrid tonight, what's going to happen? And then have that buzz all week. I think that's better. And the thing about it, as well as Jim said, it's risk and reward, right? Because say we get a group like that nobody's that excited about, and the batteries, it's a double whammy. It's a super doing, really, isn't it? Because whereas imagine playing a Real Madrid or a Liverpool and you get a result, you remember that for probably for the rest of your life. I still think about Jim touched on it when we beat Man United Nakamura free kick. We beat Milan under striking as well.
Mhm.
Beating Barcelona. And these things, you remember them forever, and they're elite, and you still watch them and enjoy them. So it's risk and reward. So you don't want to do, you don't want a PSV Brendan Rodgers thanking, but you know, if in that middle ground. So I want it all, basically, is what I'm saying.
Well, Strangelove the Doctor tries to provide it to us with I want Real Madrid, Liverpool and Sporting Lisbon.
No, don't want that. No,
That would be the ultimate in romance, but my goodness, we would probably get, I don't know, 5 doings off of that, probably.
That's
I'll
not
call
a
it
good
now,
choice.
controversially. If we get Liverpool, I think we'd beat them. Because I think they're going to struggle this season. You heard it there first. I think they'll struggle in top 4 this season.
Jim, what do you think of that
Salah's
one?
off the boil. Firmino's away. They're going to get some injuries and they've got the squad to cope. You heard it here first.
Brian said he's quite emotional. That's quite an emotional rant. We would beat Liverpool.
Maybe they'll beat them, but we got a better chance of beating them.
From a non-football point of view, I think there's a bit of a relationship between Celtic and Liverpool. So from an off-the-field thing, I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't want to go and play Tottenham. I think there's just too many risks, off-field risks involved in that. I'd like to avoid English teams. I think they're bigger and stronger and better than we are, and I don't want to play them anyway. I don't know what teams are in pot 2 and pot 3. I haven't looked at them before next Thursday. I'll have a look and I'll pick the teams, hopefully. But the criteria would be beatable teams in pots 2 and 3 that we haven't played before, and Real Madrid, because they're the most glamorous teams, and I think the top seed's going to go through anyway, no matter what. So that would be my ideal draw. If I could pick the teams that I had just now, that's what I would pick. And yeah, I take the point Brian makes. If we pick 2 less glamorous teams and they give us a doing, hey-ho, but that gives us, whoever gives us the best chance, because the objective is qualifying for the last 16, and 2 beatable teams, that gives us the best chance, and that's up to us then. That's within our control. That's up to Ange and the guys. We've got 2 teams we've got a chance of beating, so no excuses. Whereas if we picked out 3 really tough teams, then there's your excuse ready made. We're playing teams that are bigger and better and more resources than us, and therefore it was always difficult. So I just want to have a chance, because there's been seasons in the past where the Champions League or the Europa where you've got 2 home games to go and you're virtually out. And it's such a damp squib. It really is such a damp squib, particularly when Celtic Park rocks in these nights. And we haven't. I don't think we've had a Champions League night where we've had the disco lights on. So that's a new one as well. I don't know who else has got disco lights. Not that I'm saying that's a great thing to have disco lights, but it's quite a dramatic thing.
Yeah.
When the lights shine, and I always wonder what the other team are thinking about. They're in the dark.
Yeah.
They're all standing out in the dark, and then the floodlights, and it's a green thing, and it's quite spectacular. The football's not been great that follows it, but it's quite. And the Glasgow derby there, that was the 3-0 game. That was. I mean, anyone who was at the game will tell you that was the best Glasgow derby stroke previous Old Firm atmosphere there's possibly ever been, and part of that was there was no away fans, which I think no away fans in either ground is the way forward. But what an atmosphere! It was a nighttime game as well, under the lights, under the spotlight and stuff like that. It was a phenomenon. Obviously, the team go out and do the business. It was just a fantastic night, and one of the big nights of last season. So I'm looking forward to some great Champions League nights. But if we get teams that are too difficult, they wouldn't have been doing. So don't want that.
No, that's true. I mean the no.
Brian said we beat Liverpool. Did you hear that? I don't know if you heard that.
I did hear that. I'm going to hold on to that one.
Right? Just to quantify.
No, you can't qualify, because as Paul John Dyke says, this has been recorded.
No, it's recorded.
If we get Liverpool, we get a doing. That's the first thing you'll see.
I think we could beat them at Parkhead. And when I said I don't think we'll finish 4th, I meant in the Premier League. I didn't mean in the group, just in case. I think they're not that bad.
He's backtracking now.
I was going to say he's
just to qualify that.
His hot take is mere minutes old, and he's already backpedaling.
It's not back. It's just in case, because if we're honest, a lot of people sort of misinterpret what it said. So, but I was thinking they won't finish top 4 in the Premier League this year, or they'll struggle to get in.
Here's my hot take, Brian. I was talking to my brother about this last night. I actually think the Man City team we played in the Champions League a few years ago was not as good as this current Man City team. I would not want to get this current Man City team.
No English team, no matter what. I mean, I don't follow English football, and not that bothered who wins down there. But yeah, I mean, I'm repeating myself now. Just avoid English teams in general. A Man City top seed, yeah, I take it in pot 1.
Yes.
Are they in pot 1? Yeah, avoid them. Yeah, avoid them. No matter how good or bad they are, avoid them.
I think that's the worrying thing is certainly.
Unless you're Brian, of course. I mean, Brian. I think we beat Man City, Brian. I was thrown out there just to kind of.
No, I'm not sure we
Right.
beat Man City. To be
Sorry,
fair, but-
you're no sure. Maybe you're not
but-
sure we beat Man
But
City.
again, in times gone past, at Parkhead, I mean, you're not going to beat them away. You're not going to beat any of them away. But at Parkhead, I think we got a chance against them. But that would be a bit of a tall order. The boy Haaland and the boy Foden, between those two, it's just, also then De Bruyne, you could keep going, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Right.
Just for everybody,
But you're not sure. Just to qualify that. So we beat Liverpool, but you're no sure about Man City.
No sure at Man City.
just for
I
everybody.
believe on the day. I would believe on the day we could.
I
That
believe
day-
on the day. Aye.
Aye.
Until the 10th minute and we're 2 down. I'd believe on the day as well.
Just for everybody watching, this is Jim displaying to everybody why he doesn't appear on the match coverage and why he advises us not to either.
Oh, don't touch the match coverage. Never go on that, Brian.
I
know you've
don't
been on
never
it
go in the
before.
match coverage for that
Never?
reason, Jim.
Good. That's good thinking.
I don't dare.
Aye.
I barred
It's quite
myself. I gave
emotional.
myself a retrospective red card and I just won't go on.
I think that's quite good because you said you were quite emotional earlier, so I think going on a match day would be it's a no.
I don't
After
know.
the game's finished, you can analyse the game and
Aye,
but in the
calm.
heat of the action,
Too much.
what I
Yeah.
do now is actually I don't get concerned until there's 30 minutes to go. Because there was a time where after 10 minutes we're not winning and you start to get a bit, come on, mate, do it. But I think leave it to half an hour to go. Doesn't matter what happens, you get to the last half hour, then you start to get a bit frustrated if you're not scored a goal yet. So that's a tip from an old man there, Brian. Like 30 minutes to go, that's when you start to get, and you'll be so stress free during the game. Don't worry, unless we're losing, of course.
See, the problem I've got, Jim, is half an hour before the game. I'm already stressed about the result, so
No, you can't do that.
it's where
Life's
I'm
too
going
short.
wrong.
Don't do that. No, don't do that. Sorry. Sorry, Laura. I'm talking rubbish. again.
That's
There
all
you go.
right. I'm here for your nuggets of wisdom, Jim. That's what we're all here for. Brian, I'll come to you first. Let's move on from Europe. Spend the last 15 minutes of the show talking about the weekend. We've got Hearts at Celtic Park. Back to Celtic Park for another big game. Do you expect us? First of all, do you expect us to see this run continuing?
Yeah, I think so. We're sort of building momentum. If I'm going to be slightly cautious, I always feel like when momentum starts to build and this talk of undefeated runs comes, it starts to become when we're going to lose. And I'd rather not know about it. I'd rather not know how many games undefeated we are. I'd rather just get going about our business. And I think Postecoglou will try and deliver that. But it's a wee bit of concern about this run we're going and how it's going to compare to the other managers and stuff. But in regards to the game, I think it's always a good game against Hearts. I think they were hurting a wee bit after last night. So I think they beat 2-1. So it'll be interesting to see how they turn up. If they're going to be really trying to prove a point or they're going to be tired or whatever, whereas we're fully rested. And as we've spoken about a few times, it feels like a wee bit of a cheat code with the 5 subs. I know that's not going to always be the case. And it's not the number of subs, it's the sheer quality. Seeing half your outfield team. So I won't have any doubts we could do it. It would be interesting if he changes anything about the team this for to play Hearts. Because instinctively I would go like by Giakoumakis up front. Just to sort of batter their centre halves about. But he seemed to have been quite consistent in team selection. And I don't know if maybe that, I don't think, as I said earlier, I don't think that will change until maybe Europe. So probably the same team that start. Well, apart from, I think Starfelt will start over Jens because I think he's still injured. So it'll be interesting to see. But always a good game against Hearts. Always nice to beat them. And I think we will.
What's your take on that, Jim? We tend to do well against Hearts at Celtic Park. Tynecastle can be a bit more of a coin flip for us. Do you expect us to continue the run that we're on?
I thought it was quite funny, Brian. It starts at Hearts. I'm not sure Liverpool will beat, but anyway. Last season, I mean, as you said, Brian, Hearts games are always tight games. You look at last season. First game we lost when Andrew was getting his team together. The second game, the Kyogo Gates, Crawford Allen nonsense, very tight game, 1-0. The Tynecastle game, that was a big game in terms of last season, the context of last season. The Liam Boyce missing the penalty, that was huge. That goes in, and who knows what might have happened after that. And then we beat them. Was it 4-0 or 4-1 the last game of this last time we played them? But they qualified for the cup final. I think their eyes were on the cup final. I think they maybe rested a few players. And I think it's a similar situation we're in just now. I think if they qualify for Europe, that's huge for them, in terms of as a club, their stature, financially. So next Thursday's their big game, I think. And I think the lad Halkett got injured last night. I think he's out for tomorrow. He's possible next Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Robbie Nielsen, I'm thinking, well, nobody expects us to win at Celtic Park tomorrow. I don't want any more injuries. The focus is next Thursday. So I think they might rest a few players as well. So I think we'll win okay tomorrow. I said we beat Ross County 3-1, 1-1. I think we'll win 3-0 in Sunday. I think their eyes will be on something bigger, something better. And I think if we turn up and we play the way we have been playing, and we are as ruthless as we were last week, then I think something like 3-0 is not unreasonable. But like Brian, I don't think of unbeaten runs. It is what it is, because it's no bearing on what happens on Sunday. Hearts are a good team. They're third for a reason this season. They were third last season. They're easily out with the top two. They're easily the best team. They've a lot of really good players. Mixed start to the season. We're a bit lucky to beat Ross County. Unlucky to lose the last gas goal against Hibs, and they scalped Dundee United last week. So they're a good team. But I just think maybe their attention's on next Thursday because that's a bigger and better game for them to be looking at.
Do you agree with Brian's comments about lineup, or do you expect to be changes?
No, I think Ange won't deviate that much, as Brian said earlier. At this part of the season, where it's one game a week, I think look for that kind of continuity, unless there's any injuries. And if Jens is injured, then Starfelt comes in, and I think he'll start with Kyogo. I think he'll start with the same team and bring the big chap on with half an hour to go. And that's getting back to what we said there, the balance in that, about keeping everyone happy, because Hearts are a physical team. So maybe, as Brian said, maybe you're better with a more physical approach up front with the Yakimakis. But I think Ange's tends to kind of, tends to stick and doesn't twist unless he has to. And I think once the 2 games a week starts to come, is it the following week we played the League Cup game? Was that the end of the year? I think once that starts, when's the first Champions League game? Is that the following week?
The week of the 6th of September.
So I think this will be the last time we don't have an eye on a midweek game. So I think, from a continuity point of view, barring injuries, you'll stick with last week's team.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you have both said. I don't break something that. What's the phrase?
If it ain't
broke, don't fix it. That's what I was trying to say. I was trying to say that while reading something else, which is never a good idea. What I was reading is with regard to a potential signing that we have coming up. And Brian, I'll come to you on this first because we were talking about it before we came on here. One of the Celtic Feud journalists, David Friel, I think it is reporting that there's a potential medical happening in London today for Serbian international Said Haksabanovic, which I have been practicing. Still don't know if I've got it right. But he is a winger, predominantly left-sided, but the idea is that he can play across the midfield. How much do you know about him, if anything? Is it a signing that encourages you? What's your thoughts on that as a potential signing for us?
I only know about him for some sort of research I've done prior to his being linked with Celtic. I think we were actually linked with him last year, which is an encouraging sign because Ange obviously wanted to prioritise that. And I think it's an important signing for the start of the season. I've said we need someone else who can play in the wing, not really up front, because I agree with Jim earlier. I think Abada could comfortably slot in there, as can Maeda. But I do think we need cover. If Jota was to get injured, we are going to really struggle creatively in the wings. And this is what Seed the Heat, as I might call him, because Haksabanovic might be a mouthful for my Glaswegian self to say all the time. I think that he can play left, right, or through the middle, or just sort of behind the striker. In terms of player profile, it reminds me a wee bit, not in terms of how he plays, but career-wise, of Carter Vickers, because he actually debuted quite young, and he's had quite a lot of transfers. He's played quite a lot of places for a fair amount of clubs, and been consistently pretty successful at each. And I think that was much the same with Carter Vickers, and I think they're the same age as well, 23. So he's got a lot of experience for a 23-year-old, which I think is really key. Again, it goes back to my point earlier about that football intelligence. to know when to stick to the plan, know when to just come up with something a wee bit different on the fly. And I think a guy like him, whether he starts or comes off the bench, would be a good signing. And I don't know how much we're paying for him. I don't imagine it'll be that much, given the issues, sadly, in Russia and what's going on in the world with his parent club. But the other good thing about him is the Swedish club he plays for. I'm not going to try and pronounce their name because I don't want to offend any Swedes. Happy offending Scousers, clearly, but no Swedes. I think that they're midway through their season, so he's going to come in match fit, which is another bonus because he can come straight in. Really won't take him up to speed. So I'm quite excited by it. I think it's the type of signing we needed. I still think we need a holding midfielder, but it's just putting jigsaw pieces into the puzzle. So yeah, hopefully we get it over the line.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Jim, it's been a little bit quiet on the transfer front in general the last few weeks at least. Obviously, it was an encouraging sign for us that we did the business as early as we did. But are you expecting us to capture this guy? Are you expecting any further signings before the end of the transfer window for us?
I think as seasons gone by, we'd have signed one person by now, and we're all scrambling about for the last. So it's a brilliant position to be in. As you say, we've got our business done early, and just looking to add maybe one or two just to complete the squad. I think that's really good. I thought that was a really interesting question when you say, how much do you know about this guy who plays in Russia, sort of thing. I mean, if you go back, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, and you're trying to sign somebody, you would know something about them because they'd be playing in Scotland or playing in England, so you would know something about them. So usually I don't pay much attention to it until we've signed somebody, and then try and practice saying their name because that's a lot of effort to try and practice somebody's name if we don't sign them. A lot of effort. I was thinking Eddie Howe might become. Can I say his name? No, yet. Wait till he comes. So don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to say somebody's name until they're actually here. I've heard the same stuff that Brian has heard. He plays up front, along the line, could play any of the front three, could even play left midfield. We trust in Ange, and obviously we've got a worldwide network of scouts, and I'm always fascinated how we end up signing some of these players because I understand a David Turnbull because we see him every week and he's a hot property and he's not going to cost us a lot of money and the wages won't be that great. I understand that from somebody who's never been involved in professional football. I understand that. I understand, as Brian alluded to, the Russian situation means that maybe you can pick up some bargains here. Maybe if Brian, this kind of guy. I said last time, I do not understand the Argentinian one at all. Yep. That's not, he's not a good player. I'm just thinking that if we'd £3.5 million to spend and we've went to and plus wages and stuff like that, and we went to Argentina, that means that in the world, we couldn't find anyone to spend that money on, and he's the guy we should say. They had all the nonsense last week with this guy, and that's another subject I know you want to talk about. But anyway, so I'm always fascinated about how you decide to buy the players that you decide. How do you come to that conclusion? Because I think Ange has, as he says before, has a great store in not the ability, not just the ability of the players, but the type of person that they are.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've heard Brian use the phrase risk averse in the one time I heard Brian in the podcast saying that you don't want to be risk averse because you open yourself up to all sorts of stuff that might not be very good. So I think the further away you go and the more obscure you go, the higher the risks are. And depending what happens with the young Argentinian guy, that was a huge risk. Loads of money involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point I was trying to make was that, I'm just fascinated in how we actually buy players and how it works and who recommends who and the criteria which they get through. And if you compare me that, the most obvious one in recent years has been Barkas. Somebody said, you know what, if it was you buy Barkas or you buy Siegrist, say, and Barkas is 5 and Siegrist is 1. It's better value spending 5 times it on this guy than that guy. And in fact, you might be paying double the wages for this guy and that guy. Who made that decision? What was the criteria for that? And it was such a terrible decision, in a different industry. Somebody's getting their books for that. And I know you can't get everything right. Of course you can't get everything right.
And how many games did they actually watch and play before they signed them?
And that's all part and parcel of the criteria. And you're obviously not going to get everything right. I totally get that. But see when you take a high risk and it doesn't work out, then who do you blame? Well, you blame them then. If you take a low risk one, if you get out and sign somebody who you think, well, I am not saying we should sign John Souttar. I'm not saying that. But
Thank God.
but I'm just saying, but
Jim, that was
using
worse
him.
than my Liverpool team.
No. I said I'm not saying we should assign him, but I
Oh,
can
you qualified it
understand.
now? Are you back?
No. I'm explaining, Brian. This is how it works. This is how the podcast works. I talk, you guys listen, and then you say, "Oh, you're quite right, Jim. You're quite right." But all I am saying is that I could understand why a team might want to buy John Souttar, because you can get him for nothing. He's in low wages. He's an international player. If it doesn't work out, you can say, well, that was pretty low risk. I understand that. However, if you spend, the guts of £6 million, including wages, on a young Argentinian guy, I'm not criticising, I've never seen the guy play. I'm just saying that's a huge risk, both on a football terms and both financially. So that better work. That really better work, because that's somebody's taking a high risk decision there. The low risk decision, no John Souttar, but somebody like John Turnbull's a perfect example.
Aaron Moy. That was
absolutely. Anyone you get for nothing, it's pretty low risk. It's once you start spending big money, and that's the thing about and I think fans, not all fans obviously, have a tendency just to kind of say, "Oh, it's only 4 million." So 4 million for Celtic is a huge amount of money, and that's what I'm saying. That we've given this young Argentinian guy a 5-year contract. I'm assuming you're looking at maybe he's on 10 grand a week, was that $500,000 a year, 2.5 million plus 6 million. It's basically tied up in this young guy, So we need to make sure that we're looking after him. If you're a £6 million asset, not that we'd ever have a £6 million asset, you would make sure. I don't know if you'd have famous paintings worth six. You wouldn't stick it in the backseat of your car thinking, hope that nobody knows that. You'd be looking after it, So I'm always fascinated. I think it's a fascinating area in terms of how you sign a player, how much they cost, how much you pay them. Is that going to upset your wage structure and all the stuff that kind of goes with that? So I know nothing. To answer your question, sorry, I know nothing about the new guy. If we sign him, then I'll do what everyone else does. I'll have a look at YouTube. Not that tells you that much. And you can only tell once I've actually played some games. I think signing the Japanese guys was kind of high risk, but because Ange had been there, that kind of lessens the risk a wee bit. And they've all turned out brilliant. So I think we have to trust Ange in terms of what he's doing. And the only point that you can maybe question him is when they start to play games and you maybe think, maybe they're not as good as we thought. And if you paid nothing for them, you think, well, there's nothing lost there, like Moy, as you said, Brian. But if we paid a lot of money for somebody, anyway, that's a bit of a rant, sorry.
Here's a question for you, Brian. Not an easy one to close out the show, and I'll come back to Jim on it. Jim talked there, and I've said the same thing. I trust Ange. If I hear about a player being connected with the club, I assume it's because Ange wants him, and therefore, because of the trust Ange has built with the fan base, I'm willing to go with whoever he wants to sign, and we'll judge him at the time. How much control do you think the manager has over the signings that we're making and the choices that we're making, based on the fact that obviously we've had managers in the past and scouting setups where it's been quite obvious that players have been identified and brought in for the manager to use? Do you think Ange has got more of a handle on it than that?
Yeah, I think it's been fairly clear. I think maybe James McCarthy aside, I think it's been fairly clear. I think what I said at the time, and I think it's true, I think when a club like Celtic, you've got a scouting operation and you've got a remit, these are the type of players we want. We've always criticised this idea that Celtic's are to buy a kind of semi-young player nobody really knows about, with the idea of trying to sell them on for big money. It's happened enough that you can overall say it's successful, but very marginally, because you're buying, for every 10 players you're buying, there's maybe 2 that are really successful. I think Ange is still working within that system, but working it well. I think he's doing it the way it was intended. I think instead of just signing a good player because they fit the profile, he's signing a player that fits his system well. And as Jim alluded to, the type of player there that's going to fit the dynamic of the squad. Because you can see, you saw the reaction when Starfelt scored. You saw there was a togetherness in the squad, and it was good to see. And that's not by accident. That's something that's fostered. So I think in that regard, I think it's different, and I think Ange's more control. I think he gets presented with a list of targets. I don't think he says, I want that guy, I want that guy, I want that guy necessarily. I think they give him a list and he says, right, of them, these are the ones I want. But by all accounts, CEO Michael Nicholson and Ange share quite a strong relationship, and the way we've went about our transfer business, not just in terms of the pace, but in terms of the the loan to buy options, the 4-year deals, the sell-on clauses, stuff like that. It's been, I think quite tangibly different the past couple of transfer windows under Ange. So I think moving forward, it gives you confidence that he's the one that's making the calls. And I don't know the man obviously, but I don't think I'd like to be the person that decides to tell Ange who he's signing and who he isn't. I don't imagine that's a conversation that would go well. So I don't think that's the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Jim, it's something that you've touched on before. We've got a CEO who we never hear from, and that's the way we like. As long as
I think the last point that Brian made is very valid about not telling Ange. You kind of get such and such. But I think there's two Anges basically. There's the Ange that walked through the door when he first came in, and if he went to, what was the guy before, Don Mackay, and said, give me 4 million for somebody, understandably, a Don Mackay would think, not too sure, you're just in the door here. When you win the league, and when all your signings have hit the ground running, and you're playing a brand of football that's easily, the most exciting for many, many years, and you're a bit of an icon now with the Celtic fans, if Ange says, can I get 4 million for him, I think you would tend to say yes now. And I think he calls the shots. And I think what he's done exactly what he said he would do. And again, it's an astonishing thing. And people will say, oh, he'll do this and do that and stick to his guns. And you're not thinking, that'll be right. And then we lose 3 of the first 6 games. You're thinking, and people are saying, sack the guy. And he's stuck to his guns. He's not for deviating. If he gets messed about, he walks. He walks. Because his CV, after last season, if people were in any way doubting the man because he's on the other side of the world, he's shown last season, both domestically and I think in Europe, in some of the games that we played against some of the, we should have won a few of the games. And what he does and how he behaves and his manner and all this kind of stuff, he's a very marketable guy. And Brian alluded earlier to Man United and the shambles that they are now. Ange would do a great job. Ange would do a great job for any team because what he's now done is actually incrementally in his career, bit higher. And then Celtic was like stratosphere, way up here somewhere, and he's done it. So, he's a very marketable manager. And okay, you might not get a Man U, and I'm not trying to get rid of Ange on this, but a kind of Southampton or a Crystal Palace or something like that. Ange was a phenomenal manager, and he certainly could manage at the higher level. And you're going to tell him, no, I want a player. No, that's not going to happen. And obviously there's limits with it. And again, as I said, I'm fascinated how the whole thing works. And because we're not involved in that, we've got no idea. I think, again, Brian said there'll be a list of people and there's only so much Ange can actually do. So he has to depend on other people to do things. He has to trust those people. And that's been fascinating. The old John Kennedy, Gavin Strachan thing. You obviously trust them. At a time, we were all saying, not we were all saying, but a lot of the fans were saying, get rid of these guys. But Ange stuck with them. And I think he's been phenomenal. And nobody should cross the big man, at the moment, when who knows in a year's time or 2 years' time if things fall apart, which hopefully they won't. But at this point in time, I agree with Brian. If Ange says, give me some money for this guy, you give him the money.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that, and we've still got a little bit of time left to go until the transfer window closes, so we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, we've got the game coverage coming up against Hearts over the weekend, which Axon will be covering in conjunction with Celtic Down Under, which we've been doing the live match coverage with over the last few weeks. So if you haven't subscribed to those guys, then definitely go and give them a subscription as well, because they do some great content as well from the other side of the world. Jim, Brian, thanks very much for joining me today. Who knows where we'll be this time in a couple of weeks, Jim, the next time you're back on, but hopefully it's with another few points on the board anyway. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you all very soon.